All right, squad. It's 5 o'clock. Thank you all for coming and attending tonight. For those of you that don't know me, so I'm Jack Hummel, and I'm the co-owner of Limitless. And I also do the basketball training and sports psychology here, and year one of AAU basketball. And I'm extremely excited to be able to build something like a culture and develop a lot of the values that this business stands on and the reason that we're here in the first place. And we'll make sure after today, too, we're going to go through communications and stuff, too. We'll adapt and overcome. It's totally cool that there's a couple kids here. And a lot of what's in this packet, too, I would love for you to go over with your child before practice starts this week. But, yeah, we'll dive right into it. So, and so my plan is I'm the 11U girls basketball coach, the head coach. So I plan on being at all those tournaments. But I'm still going to be heavily involved with both teams for the 12U kids too. And so we plan on having twice a week practices until our summer camps start. And I'm going to be at every single one of those. But this man right here, Colton Meisner, is going to be the head coach of the 12U boys team. And we do have a really unique situation for this. My sister Kate Hummel is a basketball player at UW Oshkosh. And I apologize for any of the noise that's up here. We also got to be at the desk so that we can check people in that are still using this place. So I'll talk a little louder. But Kate, my sister, plays at UW Oshkosh, and she plans on being any interim head coach for the 12U boys if Colton here cannot attend a tournament. So Colton works for Rock Road, and there's some weekends where they might be super busy on a project. And he might be on call to work. So my sister Kate and my other player, Carson Leitzinger, he plays at Stout, will also be ready to take the call if they need to for the 12U boys basketball team. But this isn't really anything to worry about because Kate and Carson, too, are very, very close to Limitless and the culture that we've had over the years. So a lot of the things that we're trying to build, it's going to be very, very easy transition for them to implement that for the 12U boys team. But the biggest thing is I'm going to be heavily involved in a lot of things. And for those of you that don't know, so Close the Gate was the original business that branded into Limitless Performance, and my dad started that in 2015. And long story short, I've been doing this for 5 years, and now we're here. So that's where we're at. So the welcome and introduction and our unique coaching situation, I skipped around a little bit. That was number 3. Are there any questions about the coaching situation or my involvement with the teams? Are we all on the same page? Cool. Awesome. So the mission behind this program and the vision I see for it, I mean, some of us, this might be our first experience with AAU basketball, and some of us, we might have experience with other programs. From my personal experience, I definitely want to get away from a lot of the me ball of AAU basketball and trying to get noticed and essentially not teaching the game the right way. And for me, what makes a player super valuable is how well they can work with any sort of team, right? So that's my goal, is to equip these kids to understand the game, but also be flexible with what their role is, right? So if I'm typically, the best scorer on a certain team, and I'm stuck with that role, and I can only be the scorer, I have to be the one scoring all the points, right? That's not very valuable or flexible if, certain kids come into school or as we get older, things change, right? So my goal with this AAU team and this AAU program is to create flexible players by knowing how to play with the team. And another huge issue, what's up, Pat? Another huge issue that I see with where youth basketball is right now and a lot of youth sports is, well, basketball in particular, we teach a lot of plays. And that's not necessarily building an understanding of how to play the game, right? So my concern is teaching kids how to move and when, the timing of things. And defensively, too, to understand what it means to play cohesively as a team. And so that's a really, really short elevator pitch of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it as least like what AAU is like today. And so yeah, and there's a lot of details in this packet too that break it down better than what I've said. But from a team perspective, that's the mission of what we're trying to do, and it's going to be a work in progress. And I'm going to be as transparent, as authentic as possible as I can. This is my first time doing it, but I definitely know my intentions are in the right place, and my effort too in what I'm trying to get to for the kids. I know it's going to work either way. But our program philosophy and expectations. So if your child's not here today, I would love for you to go over this at some point over this next week. If you can't get to it by tomorrow night, if you're 12 of you boys, or Thursday with the girls, that's okay. But at some point, I'd love for you to talk a lot about what's in this packet and what to expect. Because I'm taking this very seriously. And I don't want the kids to just come show up and go through the motions. But at the same time, I know they're still kids. They're still 5th and 6th graders, right? So it still is about having fun, but I'm very committed to serious growth. At least the values that my father instilled in me in the company, that's kind of what I'm trying to carry on. But like I said, player development over exposure. I'm not going to prioritize winning. Obviously, we want to win. That's the goal of playing the game. But as we go through the values in this packet, say a player isn't, in alignment with the values and what I'm trying to lay out right now, I'm not going to play a player that will help you win more in that game than to try and teach them what they're supposed to be learning. And that's good for us to know right away. I'm not going to prioritize that W. But like I said, teaching basketball IQ, spacing, reads, and team play, and essentially the long-term habits that matter beyond AAU, right? And when you get deep into any sort of profession, there's a lot of core commonalities, and it's pretty simple what makes something work and what makes something successful. And a lot of that comes down to controlling what you can control. We have a limited amount of energy, we have a limited amount of time each day. Are you spending it on things you can't control? And those things are results. Those things are winnings. That's making shots. Doesn't matter how long we shoot in the gym for, I can't will a shot to go in the hoop, right? And so I'm very philosophy-oriented towards success and growth as a receiving, less than I have to think about winning and being the best player all the time, right? We're process-oriented, and that's really what I'm going to try and instill in the kids. What greatness is ordinary, right? It's the things you do on a daily basis. That's what's really, really going to help these kids, and getting them to understand that, because more and more these days we're prioritizing these goals, and it feels good to set these big goals. But then they get lost, and they don't do the work that actually gets them what they're trying to strive for. And to essentially distill down the core values and the culture into 3 simple things, the first one is compete. So focusing on intention and effort and controllables, right? Things we can do on purpose in that moment. That's really the only thing I ever care about. Is this kid give me everything they can in this moment? And I understand that we all, lapse focus, and we're not going to perform at our peak level every single day. But what's the peak level of performance in that moment that we're in terms of, are they giving me everything they got? And that's really all I care about. I'm never going to get mad at a kid for turning the ball over or missing shots, or it's if they're not, applying what they listen to or don't have a better reason for what they're doing. That's really where my concern is. Leaders eat last. I love that phrase. But serving the teams in actions and service, and coaches as well, we're less concerned about telling them what to do and more concerned about showing them what to do, right? And that's really a big value that I'm going to try and instill the kids, that, to show the way that leaders are typically the ones that serve, and it's less about them. And that is where success comes, and that's what people are attracted to, because this kid does care about the teammate, right? He's not just using this kid to get more of accomplishments or people to recognize him or whatever it is. And love over fear. If you simplify decision making to be successful, am I making this decision out of fear, or am I making it out of love, right? Am I trying to hide from, turning the ball over because I'm scared to make a mistake, or am I passing the ball to my teammates because I love the game of basketball, I just love to play, right? And that's not a great example, but that's really what I'm trying to teach the kids, is to not make decisions out of fear, because that's never a habit that will lead to success in whatever we're doing. So those are the 3 core concepts. Are we competing to the best of our ability? Are we displaying leadership in a way that's not telling kids what to do, but showing them the way? And the third one, love over fear, trying to do a better job making decisions out of love, not to build fear in the kids. And we're big into positive reinforcement, but it doesn't mean we're going to be super bubbly all the time. We're still going to be pretty intense. But we know psychology, that's my degree, it doesn't really work. It doesn't motivate kids. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to harp on them from time to time, but we're not going to be a rah-rah type of coaching situation. So yeah, that's a simplified version kind of what to expect in terms of core value. Playing time. So in terms of playing time, and again, these are rough estimates. They're not always going to be perfect, but typically the minimum player is going to play around 15 minutes in a game. And like I said, this isn't going to be we're going to play every kid the same amount of minutes. Towards the end of the game, we are going to put the best 5 players that we think are going to help us win the game in that situation. And again, that's going to change over time, but we'll have a system created so that there isn't kids that aren't playing at all. And because originally, when I had this vision, I wanted to have 9 players on a team because then kids could play more. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, then we don't have 10 kids to play 5-on-5. And then the more I thought about it, like I said earlier, success and greatness is born in the ordinary. Practice is where we get better in terms of playing these small-sided games in situations where they can learn what to do in that moment. And then I can break it down and stop it, where we can't really do that in a game. And we certainly do grow in the game, but practice is where we get really good. And so I'm going on about that to explain that's why we have 10 players on the team. And we're also going to try something this year that club volleyball does. So club volleyball does what's called practice players, and we're going to have 1 practice player on each team this year. Because there are going to be certain practices and tournaments that kids can't go to. And the practice player can jump in if there's less than 2 kids. Say 2 kids are out, then the practice player can jump in for the tournament. But that way at practice, we shouldn't ever have a problem or issue with less than 10 kids in practice. And that's my goal, is so we can do a lot of 5-on-5 stuff. Because when we're doing the AAU practice, it's going to be less about the specific skill development like you've seen in a lot of my camps, and it's going to be more about teaching the game of basketball. And that gets me into a lot of the next stuff you can see if you see on training philosophy. I think it's page 7. And sorry I'm jumping all over the place. I'm just trying to speak from the heart right now. But offensive philosophy, we're going to run a 4-out, 1-in. Okay? From my experience, and again, I played at River Falls, played at Craig, played at Platteville. And so a lot of what I'm going to teach is from a lot of things I picked up at the college level. But 4-out, 1-in for me personally is what I think offensively in basketball makes the most sense, because there's more space and it teaches kids positionless basketball, because that's where we're at with the game of basketball. It's positionless. And yes, if I'm a 3-point shooter, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the post. But it's really important for a guard to understand what a post does so they know when to move or what to do in certain situations. So when I say 4-out, 1-in, it's not like we're keeping a post in the block the entire time. Kids are still going to know when to move and what to move, where and when, at any given moment. But that's, again, it's less about plays. I'm teaching them when someone drives at you, right, what are you going to do? Or when the ball's not on the ball, what can I do here? Can I cut? Can I set a backdoor screen? Can I set a flare screen, down screen, whatever it is? That's really what we're going to be concerned about. And it's going to be a work in progress. It's not something that can just be immediately mastered. But my goal by the end of the year is that, kids know what to do. When this person drives at me, what am I supposed to do? Do I get a dribble handoff here? Do I set a ball screen? Whatever it is. But that's in terms of our offensive philosophy. If you see what we're doing, that's kind of what we're trying to go for. Defensive philosophy, it's going to be what's called a pack line. Pack line, so a lot of what I see in youth basketball for defense is a lot of rah-rah pressure stuff, which is great. I think it's awesome to teach them defensive intensity, but a lot of times that screws the teammates if you're up in pressure and then you get beat and they got a wide open layup with a ton of space. Because if you keep basketball simple, right, on offense you attack space, on defense you don't want to give them space. And so defensively, pack line's trying to stay in the gaps on defense and essentially force them to shoot. You're not trying to give up easy looks, high percentage shots. And so if you see kids that, aren't quote-unquote giving good pressure, we're trying to teach them to be in the gaps and always ready in a stance and moving where the ball is. So that is another thing to understand about defensive philosophy. Why aren't they pressing, or why aren't they doing these things? And we might do that stuff, but our goal is to not let them get layups or close shots. Cool. And then, yeah, just so those are the two main things, offensive philosophy, what to do, defensive philosophy, what to do in certain situations. We're not building robots, we're building understanding. And then the third thing is, like I talked about earlier, you're really valuable as a player if you know how to work with the team and be flexible. And your role could change throughout the year, and the role will form throughout the year. But a lot of team building exercises, those are the three main things we're going to focus on in practice. If we go back to, yeah, so cool, I explained the practice player. Let me know, it would be helpful if you can let me know the week of, 1 to 2 weeks before if you plan to miss a certain tournament. Just it's easier for me versus getting a couple months before, and then I can't remember with 22 families which one's not going to be at which one. So that would be super helpful for me if you know you're going to miss a tournament 1 to 2 weeks before, so we can prep in practice. And if we're going to have 3 kids gone in a tournament, how to prepare for that too. Yep.
Can you just jump back to the practice player?
Yep.
I don't really understand what you were.
Yep. Okay. So a practice player means that the player is going to be participating in all the practices, but they're not going to be participating in the tournaments. They can still come to the tournaments to support the team, but if there's more than 2 kids gone for a tournament, so say I have a 10-kid team and 2 kids are gone, the practice player would be eligible to step in for that tournament if they wanted to do so. Correct. There's going to be 11 kids at practice. Yep. So that way if someone's gone from practice, we still have 10 kids to play 5-on-5. And again, that's a thing club volleyball does, and it's new for the AAU basketball world, but we're going to try it out and see how it goes. But I'm trying to make the decision that's consistent with what we're trying to do for the kids. Notifications and communication. So it'd be very helpful is everyone okay with GroupMe? Have we used GroupMe before? No? Okay. Well, we'll see how it goes. But if you could turn notifications on for GroupMe, that'd be super helpful so we don't have any mix-ups, because email, I know if it's not on your phone, sometimes we might miss something, where a notification on our phone, we're probably not going to miss time-sensitive information. So we'll see how that goes, and if we find a better server that's easier for everyone, then we can do that. But for right now, that's what we're going to go with. General questions in the group chat that others could benefit from is super helpful. So that way it skips a lot of steps for us, but if it's a personal question about your player, then obviously I'd ask you to reach out to me personally. Schedules and jerseys. So in terms of what I set for the schedule 2 weeks ago, is everyone good with what we've got so far? Yes? So one thing I did want to ask and see what we're comfortable with, because again, they're 5th and 6th graders, so I'm still learning from parents what they like and don't like. Would you families want to practice until 9 o'clock for the first 2 weeks so we have more time with the kids, or would that be too late of a bedtime? Let's think about it. I'll put it in the chat for parents to think about it. We can vote on it too. But if parents are okay with that, I'd love to have more time with the kids, but I'm trying to be mindful of their bedtime too. So that's something to think about, and I'll send it in the chat with this video for the other parents that aren't here today. For the 11U girls, another thing I'm going to send in the chat. So it's getting difficult for me because I'm coaching both teams and I'm doing the training. So there are a few blocks for my training. I'm trying to find trainers to do so. And I found someone to do a block on Monday, because right now 11U girls we're at Fridays, which isn't terrible, but I'm wondering if Mondays would be better for the 11U girls, Mondays and Thursdays. And this wouldn't happen next week. We're still Thursday and Friday next week. But I'm going to put in the chat to see if parents want to do Mondays at 4:30. Because that slot could potentially be open. But again, I'm going to talk to the parents and see what they do. And I know this is a lot of moving pieces, and I do have a lot of roles here too. So I'm doing my best to do what's best for the families, but also what's best for us too. So yeah, so I'll put that in the chat and we'll vote on it. Cool. I will be gone the week of May 26th to June 4th. My sister for Oshkosh is doing a Greece tournament where they play in Greece, so I'm going to be going to that, which is pretty cool. But there aren't any tournaments in that week. That's just practices, and we plan on Colton and Carson will be helping out that week, which is, again, why this will be an easy transition, because they're teaching the same philosophy to both teams, so it's going to be easy for them to step in. Oh, one discussion too that I'm going to put in the chat to think about. I know a big part of this is to keep things local and development, which is what I did try to design when I was making the tournaments. But another thing that I do think could have a lot of potential benefit is trying to figure out organized families that could do at least one overnight stay, just for the kids to spend time in a hotel and for the parents to get to know the coaches more. In my personal experience, that's a huge, awesome piece of AAU. And that's totally okay if some parents don't want to do that, but I'd love if we as a group for each team could figure out what multi-day tournament would we like to do that for. I think that'd be pretty cool. So that's another thing we'll think about, digest it, and then talk about it in the chat. Okay, cool. Dang, okay, so I think I covered most of the things that I wanted to cover. Are there any general questions at this moment with what I talked about? None? I did an okay job explaining it. Cool. Well, if any questions do come up, never be afraid to ask. And the biggest thing, another thing too, I have the parent contract attached to this packet if you haven't given it to me. Just before the first tournament would be helpful. And a lot of that too was just laying out kind of the what to expect from me. And the biggest thing too is I asked to never be afraid to be transparent. Parent, just come talk to me, and let's have a face-to-face conversation about it. Because this is new territory for me too, handling difficult things like kids playing time and what we think and versus what I think. So the biggest thing I ask is just to come talk to me, and we can work through it. But yeah, if you could have that parent contract signed before the first tournament, that'd be super cool. Otherwise, I think I've gone through.
What's the roster form and how to fill it out?
Yep, great question. Don't worry about that. I don't know why that was in there, typo. So don't worry about that bullet point. Great question. I think I put the roster form on the back. So I think that what I was trying to do. So the tournament schedule's on the back, and numbers are on the back. Oh yeah, jerseys. So we do have our jerseys here, which is awesome. Came 2 weeks early, which is pretty cool. And Jess, I know we're talking about, so I'm not done actually. I have to talk about this. Jess, we're going to try and figure out, organize something where we can take photos of the kids in the jerseys and find a way to put them on the website. We know kids with. Okay. Okay. Yep. Connected in some way. Yeah. So we are going to organize that at some point too at a practice. But we know that could be a cool experience for kids to see their picture with the jerseys and roster form online. But otherwise, yeah, so I'll have these ready for practice throughout this week, but we're going to have to go through and figure out the exact short sizes. It would take too long tonight.
What about practice jerseys?
Practice jerseys, great question. So I have pennies.
You do?
Yep. So, yeah, big thing about practice is just making sure kids have shoes and they're mentally ready to go. Cool? Well, yep, no, you're good.
I know the boys, their first one is in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Will we get times soon?
Correct. So at any time, typically tournaments end at 1 to 2 weeks prior. It might even be a little less than that because from what tournaments are trying to get as many teams as possible, and obviously every late team that signs up affects the schedule. So
It's usually like 4 to 5 days.
yeah, so as soon as I get it, I'm going to send it to everybody. But a lot of that is out of my control. Thanks, Mary. Cool, good question. Any other questions?
Is the schedule pretty well set?
The schedule's set. Yep, those are the tournaments.
And they're only one-day tournaments? There's no...
Well, there's a few multi-days. So if you look at the chart, I have an X by the multi-days. And again, I did my best to balance those because I know we're trying to have a balance between development and not running all over the place like crazy people, and I know we have other kids too. Good question. Any other questions?
What is the Friday practice again? When are
So this week it's 4 to 6.
4 to 6?
Yep,
Okay.
4 to 6.
Okay. Thursday and Friday?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then we'll talk tomorrow if we want to end at 8:30 or 9. for the rest of the week for practices, depending on bedtimes for parents. Cool. Any other questions? No? Cool. Well, I appreciate all of you. Thank you for coming. And then if you have any personal questions, I'm just going to be up here waiting for everybody to line up and ask them. Cool. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Cool. Is that good?